Hello and welcome to Sipz and Stories. My name is Elizabeth, and in today's video I have an exciting announcement to make. I have currently accepted a teaching job in South Korea. So over the next year I will be abroad teaching English to elementary school kids in South Korea. This is something that I have wanted to do for the longest time. I'm kind of in a crossroads now. I have to decide if I want to really move on in the corporate world and get the whole MBA and do all that, or if I want to go back to my teaching roots and my love for children and children's literature, which I've definitely decided to do. So I am so excited to go over there, and as you can imagine, I'm really nervous, and I am reading a lot of books about the subject, a lot of books set in Korea or by Korean American authors, including several children's chapter books as well. So grab your favorite beverage as I discuss Korean literature. As you can imagine, I have a lot of guidebooks now on my phone that are about Korea, about Seoul, about the language. I'm very nervous about the language, I won't lie. It's very tricky, but also kind of easy to learn as long as I keep studying it. But I also wanted to get more of an insight into Korean culture and Korean history. I don't know much about the Korean War other than what I learned in high school and college and things like that. And I did buy this book, Korea, the Impossible Country by Daniel Tudor. I highly recommend it if you ever are traveling to Korea. It just kind of gives you a breakdown of Korean history, their culture, the occupation with Japan, and then also the Korean War. And it also gets into just Korea's rise to power in the last 50 years, South Korea, as they've become a democracy and they've gained a lot of political and economic power, which I just find fascinating, like many people, how they went from a war-torn, rural agriculture group of people to a really dominant economic powerhouse for technology and the economy, and especially education, which is why I'm excited to go over there and learn how their education system works. So I do recommend this book. I have not finished it. I'm still currently reading it, but it's been teaching me a lot about the Korean culture. A lot of you are probably thinking, oh, Korea, have you read Panchinko by Min Jin Lee? I know this book has been hugely popular the last few years on BookTube. A lot of my favorite booktubers love this book, so I am very excited to read it, although it is quite long. It is over 500 pages. I know that it has also been turned into a television show, so I'm excited to read it for that reason as well. But I am saving it for when I'm over there because I know it's this like huge family saga drama. I'm sure that I'm gonna love it. It's just something that I just don't have the patience for right now, but I will definitely read Panchinko, tell you what I think about it. I believe that it starts in Jeju, in the island of Jeju, and this young woman gets pregnant and she needs to find a husband really quickly, so she marries this Japanese minister, I think, and they go to Japan, and then this is this whole like family saga epic thing. So I don't know if it's 100% in Japan or if it comes back to Korea. Not exactly sure, but yes, I know it's good and I do plan on reading it eventually. One book that I have currently been reading though and absolutely loved, I highly recommend it, is Kim Ji-young, 1982. The author is Nam-Joo, and I apologize for all the mispronunciation that I'm going to do in this video of authors' names, but this book is so good. It is by a Korean author, and now it's become this international bestseller. And I loved it. It is such a feminist, like girl power book. I love it. It basically is the story of this woman named Kim Ji-young. And it starts off when she is a little girl going to school. Then it talks about her experiences in high school and college. And then also her experiences as a young working woman. I think she works in marketing. And then just about being a wife and a mother. And it's really talking about the misogyny in Korea and just how women are suppressed compared to men in Korea, and that all the opportunities tend to go to men. And at first, as an American woman, you're going, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that this isn't happening in America. And then you're like, wait a minute. We just overturned a really important law last year, the Supreme Court, and no one seems to care about it. So this book will really make you like ultra feminist, I'll just tell you that much. But yeah, it just talks about how Kim is just frustrated because all the opportunities in her life seem to favor men. And so her and her sister have to share a room. her brother who doesn't have to. Her parents save to send them to college, but the better opportunities are given to her brother. And then just when she's in high school, just the kind of misogyny of her teachers and just some of the other students, and just the way the kids dress. So a lot of the kids are not in sports, especially girls, just because of the way that they're expected to dress. Then she gets into college and just how all the opportunities in college are usually given to men. Men are usually recruited first out of college because it is expected that a woman will eventually get married and have children, so they're not as big of an investment for companies. And then she does eventually get a job. She gets a job in marketing, but she comes to find out that her bosses are giving her like all the hard work because men are expected to be more long-term in the company. So they give the women the hard work, thinking that eventually they're just going to get married and have kids. Then she does get married, and then just all the pressure from her in-laws to have a son. And then when she does have a daughter, just the disappointment when she has a daughter, she has to leave work and just raising her daughter and childcare. And apparently this is like a really big hit in Korea because it's really speaking to that very competitive culture in Korea currently. Just this culture is very highly educated, especially the women, but they're competing for all these jobs. And at first you're thinking, oh, 1982, that's only like early 40s. I didn't realize that they are going through all the same experiences that a typical housewife would go through maybe here in America, like in the 1950s or 60s. So it's nice to see that there's kind of this like gender revolution happening in Korea at this time. I love it. I love this book. And if you're one of those people that thinks the future is female, you'll love this book. The next one is a self-help memoir, and even though it's about depression, it is kind of fun, if that makes sense. It's called I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki, and it's by this author named Baek, Se-Hee. So again, sorry for the mispronunciation. And apparently it's recommended very highly from RM from BTS. And I don't know, I just like the cover of this book. I like the mention of tteokbokki. I know that that is like a very famous Korean dish, great street food, great comfort food. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I think it's these like little rice cakes that are just swimming in this like spicy sauce with all the condiments. Looking forward to eating tteokbokki. But this one, it's really interesting. It's about this young girl, this kind of millennial Gen Z girl that works again in publishing. And she just talks about this like low level undercurrent of depression that she just cannot escape from, even though she has it made. She has a good education, a good job, which as we've seen from that last book is just something to be really valued and respected in Korean culture. So she's talking about that even though she has all that, she just feels mildly depressed like all the time. Not suicidal depressed, but just this undercurrent of sadness all the time. And I'm so glad that people in Korea, just like around the world, are really speaking out about self-help and mental illness. I'm really glad that young people are really talking about that now. And that's what this book speaks to. It speaks about comparison to other people and social media and things like that. It's told through a series of dialogue between the main character, the writer, and her psychiatrist, and then she kind of sums up some of the lessons that she learns in therapy. I really love the psychologist in this one too. Her psychologist just seems very compassionate and understanding, and she never quite says if it's a man or a woman, but I always picture this psychologist as being this just very loving woman that she's talking to. It's really good. So I think if you're just one of those people, like a disillusioned millennial Gen Zer, you'll probably really like this book. Now on to a memoir that I absolutely loved, and that was The Magical Language of Others by E.J. Ko. This book is really popular in the Pacific Northwest where I live because the author currently lives in Seattle. She is a poet, and so she teaches a lot of classes, I think, at UW and things like that. But I love this memoir. It's so fantastic. It just was so poignant, so beautiful, and because the author is a poet, just has beautiful lyrical language. So it is about this young girl, the author, when she was 14, so between the ages of 14 and 21, her parents moved back to South Korea and her father went to work for this very big South Korean business firm. They basically left their 2 kids in America to kind of raise themselves. So her brother was going to UC Davis at the time. So the young girl, she goes to live with her brother in Davis from the ages of 14 to like 20 when she goes off to college herself. And it's just heartbreaking because she does not have her mother during the years when you really need your mother. It's just kind of told through this series of letters that her mother sends to her from South Korea as she's growing up during her teenage years. The daughter and the son, they go to South Korea very often, but the parents are just adamant that they continue their education in America and really make a name for themselves in America. She goes to school, she goes to NYU and becomes this poet, this writer. It's really, really good. I especially love the ending. So as estranged as their relationship is between the mother and the daughter, it just has this very hopeful, happy ending when they all kind of settle down in Seattle. It also really gets into the grandparents. She talks a lot about her grandmothers, both her paternal grandmother and her maternal grandmother, and just the lives that they led as well. Again, such a good book. If you're just looking for a really beautiful, poignant memoir to read in one sitting, you know, during a long, lazy afternoon, this is the perfect book to read. This next one is a memoir of a North Korean girl that escaped to freedom by Yeonmi Park in order to live a North Korean girl's journey to freedom. And in my research of all these stories set in Korea or about women in Korea, of course, there have been a lot of memoirs popping up about women that have escaped from North Korea. And a lot of people are asking me, are you nervous to be so near North Korea? I mean, it's one of the harshest dictatorships in the world, and it just happens to be a few hours away from where I'll be living. You know, honestly, I'm not immune to it. I am kind of nervous. I think I want to learn as much as I can about the situation, which is why I'm reading all these history books and memoirs right now. But I do feel relatively safe living in a democracy like South Korea. But yeah, I think this is really interesting. While I'm there, there is a DMZ, demilitarized zone in Seoul that you can visit if you want to learn more about North Korea. I definitely plan on doing that when I'm in Seoul. And this story, just stories like this, fascinate me. I haven't started reading it yet because I know it's going to be really harsh and intense. I know that her family originally escaped to China. They escaped to the north in China, and then they just ended up being trafficked in China. So they had to come back, and then they eventually escaped through Seoul to South Korea. Just fascinated by the bravery of these women who are so young. A lot of them are only in their 20s when they escape. So just so fascinated. One trend you may be noticing so far is that a lot of these stories about Korea are not exactly happy walk in the park kind of stories. I just think the Korean culture for generations has been tough because Korea is this place that is sandwiched between just bigger, more powerful countries that have constantly had an influence on Korea, including America. So you'll see a lot of influence from China, and then of course the occupation with Japan and the early 1900s. Of course, not only does that affect the adult books, but it affects the children's books as well. And a lot of these children's books are really deep and insightful. The first one I'd like to talk about is Finding Junie Kim by Ellen Oh. I haven't read this one yet, but it comes highly recommended. I've heard nothing but good things about this book. It's about a little girl named Junie Kim growing up in America, and she endures a lot of like racism going to her school, a lot of kids picking on her, things like that, because she's the only Korean girl at her school. And one day her teacher gives her an assignment to do like a family history project, and so she ends up interviewing her grandparents and learning all about the Korean War and what life was like in Korea at that time. So she learns to just kind of have respect for her grandparents and then realize and gain more confidence in herself going to school in America. This sounds absolutely fantastic. A lot of people love this book. It has won the Asian Pacific Children's Award, so I'm really looking forward to reading this as well. One classic children's book that I've been reading recently is A Single Shard by Linda Sue Park. This book has been on my TBR for a long time. It won the Newbery over 20 years ago, so I want to say like 2000 or 2002 or something like that. And it is so good. For the longest time, I have not been interested in A Single Shard until obviously right now, but oh my gosh guys, I totally missed out on this book. I recommend that if it's on your TBR to bump it up maybe in time for middle grade March, because it was such a beautiful and poignant little story. I loved it. Sometimes you read books that are Newbery Award winners and you're like, yeah, that wasn't that great. But sometimes they are just phenomenal, and that is the case with A Single Shard. It is about this little boy named Tree Ear. It is set in 12th century Korea, so a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. And this little boy becomes the apprentice to this master potter who makes all these ceramic pots. And he's homeless and he's an orphan, so he lives underneath this bridge with this little old man named Crane Man. And Crane Man is kind of teaching him about life as he grows up. And it's so beautiful, it's so poignant. It just really describes an epic hero's journey as Tree Ear learns to kind of grow and become an individual and become a man in this book. And at first, Min, the potter, is so mean to him. He makes him do all this menial work, like chop down trees for the firewood, for the kilns, and then go to the clay pits and get all this certain clay to make the pots. And if he doesn't get the right clay, Min gets really upset. And then it does involve this like really epic journey when Tree Ear has to take one of Min's pots to the royal court to see if it is accepted by the royal court. Such a beautiful book. It's a great hero's journey. I loved it. And then at the end, in her author's note, she talks about this vase that's called the Thousand Crane Vase. And apparently that vase is in Seoul, in a museum, an art museum in Seoul. Now that I read this book, I definitely have to go track down the Thousand Crane Vase because I cannot wait to see it. And last but not least is When You Trap a Tiger by Tae Keller. Tae Keller is another Korean American author, I think second or third generation. And this book is so good. It's another Newbery Award winner. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. I know that in the last few middle grade March challenges, a lot of people have talked about this book. I just have never gotten around to reading it until now. And again, it's such a sweet little book. It is about two sisters, Lily and Sam, and their father has died. So their mother has fallen on hard times, and she moves the girls back to Washington, where I live, to live with their grandmother. And the grandmother is this very traditional Korean grandmother who dresses really whimsical. She makes all this fantastic Korean food, and she tells the little girls all these really fun and beautiful Korean folk tales and stories and fairy tales that are set in Korea. One of the fairy tales is about these tigers, and these tigers take stories and they steal stories and they hide them in the night sky. Such a beautiful little book. And eventually Lily, the main character, she starts seeing a tiger show up in real life, and she can't figure out what the tiger is trying to tell her. But it's just all about growing up, about family. It's really a female book because it's about multi-generation of these women in this family. It also gets into, obviously, issues of aging and dementia with the grandmother, which is why I think it's a Newbery Award winner. It's very poignant. You will cry at the end. I did. And then it's just all about Lily kind of learning to have strength and believe in herself. Tiger is really important to Korea tradition. In fact, I think the origin myth of Korea itself has a tiger and the bear in it. Very, very good little book. I absolutely loved it. So there you have it, everyone. Thank you again for joining me for my overview of Korean literature. These are all the books that I am reading currently to inspire me before I start teaching in South Korea. And again, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen to my channel. Obviously, I can't post that often, but I really will try to post at least once a month if I can. I was thinking of doing maybe more vlog style videos so that you can see what my life is like in Korea. Obviously, I cannot film children, so I won't be doing that, but I will be talking about a lot of children's literature, of course, and then some of the books I'll be reading by Korean authors. And I definitely cannot wait to see some of those bookstores in Seoul and Busan and Jeju. And while I'm over there, I might be taking some side trips to Japan, so look forward to those videos as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.